Hi, welcome to Spotlight on Mary Lou Belli on the Virtual Channel Network. I started out as an actor in the business. I had some wonderful years after having a conservatory training at Penn State University, and then I went to New York City, got my equity card in about 3 weeks, started acting, and decided very shortly after moving to the West Coast that I wanted to be behind the camera. The year I decided to stop acting, I took an entire year off, and I promised myself that I would wake up every morning and explore what my next career was going to be. It varied from becoming a psychologist to going to get my law degree to doing the Starkey program at USC, the producing program, and I finally decided that directing was exactly where I should be. When I transitioned from acting to directing, it was at a time when there was a big effort to give women an extra look. During that time, I directed Charles in Charge, which was my very first show. I think there were 5 new women directors that same season. So was it hard? I think if I had thought it was hard, I wouldn't have attempted it. And if it was as hard as I think it is today for the new director coming in, who's even through a diversity program, I would say it's way harder today than it was then. When I got my first directing job, I had really paid my dues. I had, on paper, directed over 100 episodes of TV, meaning I had watched those episodes. I was on the show as a dialogue coach. I had marked shots, and I was super ready. So yes, there was a thrill to find out that I was going to get my shot, but I would say the biggest jolt for me in my entire career was my first rave in the New York Times, and it was as an actor. And I did dance in the streets. Having been a former actor, I would say it colors everything, the totality of all my directing. First and foremost, I love actors. I don't think you'll find a more empathetic director alive. I actually think what they do is harder than what I do as a director. And I have an utmost respect for the bravery it takes to basically get naked every day in front of that camera. I really had some wonderful teachers who I respected. And my ahas as an actor, as a working actor, came sometimes not in the moment when I was being taught. So I've always been very in touch with my relationship as a performer to teaching. So when I got a chance to give back and teach myself, I wanted to be very good at it. I wanted to be memorable. And for me, it opened up an entirely new career because after I taught my first 1 or 2 classes, I started writing about how to teach. And that writing about how to teach has made me profoundly a better teacher. My first book, the Sitcom Career Book, now in its 2nd edition, really came out of the fact that I was working on sitcoms. I had already directed some sitcoms, and I was on set and I saw people who weren't doing their best work. I knew that by making some key points, I could make a huge difference in the way they approach their work and the success of their work. So the first book, which was the Sitcom Career Book, led to the next one because I had done a lot of children's programming, and that's called Acting for Young Actors. And actually, my publisher wanted an acting book, and I said, great. And I said, well, I love teaching acting. Let me just do this. He said, yeah, but we want it for kids. And I said, well, I don't teach kids very differently from the way I teach adults. So other than a few referrals to SpongeBob SquarePants and referring to young roles like Romeo and Juliet as opposed to Othello and Iago. It's basically the same technique that I'm teaching to both adults and young actors. My third book, Directors Tell the Story, was really about a huge transition in my directing career. After doing over 150 episodes of television, multi-camera sitcom mostly, and winning an Emmy for a documentary I directed, I said, I really want to be directing episodic television. And it took a lot of work, a lot of observing, and a huge influence by my co-author and other generous directors, my co-author being Bethany Rooney, to share with me a lot of information I didn't yet know about directing episodic television. And I feel like I've successfully made that transition, and it's all in the book, which is actually used internationally and being translated into Chinese. The directing book is not just for directors. There's a huge amount that actors would benefit from reading this book. And a lot of it is addressed to the actor in terms of what goes on set, what goes on before you get there, what goes on after you've been there, but so much about what you should know while you're there on set. The Sitcom Career Book can be a companion to any style of teaching, and in fact, I often say it would be a great high school textbook for anyone who wants to learn comedy technique, because, and we reference this in the book, my co-author Phil Ramuno and I, from Commedia dell'arte to Neil Simon to sitcoms that are both joke-driven or character-driven, so much of it falls in the same field. And so much of it is about knowing technique, knowing rhythms, knowing how to spot a joke, the structure of jokes, and most importantly, the structure of the story. When I'm directing a sitcom, it begins obviously with me reading the script. I break down that script very carefully and very specifically so that I know a way it can be shot. And therefore I know how it should be staged and how that staging will enhance the comedy. After I've done that homework, I usually get a chance to cast the parts that are guest stars for that week or co-stars for that week. And I love going to casting. Again, I love actors. So when I get to see different performances, it always informs me more about the story by watching actors' takes on the same material. After casting, and it's usually an embarrassment of riches, how many people come in and are just quite fabulous for the part, and a part has been chosen, or an actor has been chosen for that part, not just by me. There's a lot of people who weigh in. Studio and network always have approval over who's going to be cast. And I would say my biggest power comes in being the person who can veto. And I do sometimes. And as much as I say I love actors, there's an occasion where I go, life is too short. So there's a very, very short list, but a very specific list of people who I go, no, might be talented, but not worth the trouble. The table read is a vital step to the network and studio hearing this script for the first time. Now, I say them particularly because they have a lot of power during that table read to fire people afterwards. And it's scary. So the actor has to come really, really prepared. I, as the director, have probably cast you, or you're the regular cast, so there's no chance of your being fired there. But in terms of being an actor and coming to a table read, you first have to show up early. You have to feel comfortable in the room, and you must do a performance, especially and even if the cast is at a very low energy, possibly because they shot a show way into the wee hours of the morning and they haven't even had a 12-hour turnaround, but because they're looking for the new person and what can the new person bring to this script. So if you have any doubts about how much of a performance you must give at a table read, all out performance. And if you're concerned that you're not sitting across from the person you're performing with or next to the person you're performing mostly with, by all means say something. Usually someone has thought this out, but if they haven't and you think it's really important to your character, the assistant director would be the person to approach about that. The series leads and the guest stars are there for the table read. Co-stars, especially if you haven't been hired for the full 5 days, are often invited to that table read, which means you're not getting paid to be there and is your prerogative whether to go. My feeling is go, show off, do your stuff, strut your stuff. I will say, though, in all honesty, some people will say, no, don't go because they might fire you on the first day. And my feeling is that's living in fear. And if that's where your acting career is, that's not a good place to be. Now, the shoot for a single camera and a multi-camera differ greatly. For a multi-camera show, you will have rehearsed for 3 days. You will have had a very, very strong relationship with the director and interacted with him or her, very much the way you would be rehearsing a play. The shoot for a single camera is like shooting a movie. You go in, you may not have met the director other than to say thank you to him or her after your audition, and you show up and the AD has put you into hair and makeup and you're coming to the set to rehearse. And in that case, there's not a huge amount of time for interaction other than getting right to the work. The place and time that there might be a chance for you to interact more with the director is while lighting is going on and after that initial rehearsal, if you are camera ready. And in fact, if I could tell a little anecdote on the Heart of Dixie that just aired a couple weeks ago that I directed, I realized that the guest star with the largest part that I had cast, he and I had had the same acting teacher. And we sat down in the anteroom to the actual room we were filming in and talked for 25 minutes. And in fact, we have an email relationship. We can't wait to see each other again. I just invited him to my home to hear a reading of a new play. And that time off being the right time to chat, as opposed to before the scene when we were rehearsing. And I said, "Hi, Kevin, glad you got the part. Let's go." And now it's now we have more time to get to know each other. But that's on a single camera show, that's always going to be the case. There, it's just rehearse, light, shoot, rehearse, light, shoot. It's the nature of the beast. If an actor has questions, I can't think of any better person to ask than me. And there are no stupid questions. And if you don't feel safe on a set doing exactly that, then something is wrong with that set. Once a show is shot, of course, the editor does an assembly, then the director does their cut. The director tries to get that cut fairly close to time. I mean, if I'm within a minute and a half, I feel good. But sometimes certain shows like to shoot 5 minutes over. And during those 5 minutes over, there's going to be 5 minutes that sometimes a director doesn't have control over what gets cut. So I try to get my shows as close to time as I can. But even in that, first and foremost, actually always, my decisions about what stays in or what gets cut can never be about, oh, I loved his performance, oh, he's my friend. It always has to be what serves the story. And in some cases, serving not just the story, but the main characters of that story and protecting them. I actually cast a friend and a student of mine in an episode that I had to cut her completely out of, sadly to say. But that's the way it goes sometimes. In terms of actors and social media and on-set etiquette, it's never, ever appropriate to ever take photos or post anything that happened on the set to social media. That's just my feeling. It's a place that needs to have the privacy and security that what goes on the set, stays on the set. Now, that being said, I can't think of any better tool for an actor to have than social media in terms of talking about your work, talking about a remark that somebody might have said that you have permission to use, that you might be quoting somebody. But very often on a set, things like storylines, they're secret. The network definitely doesn't want them to be known before the show airs that information. So to spoil it for everybody and to spoil the person who is remunerating you for your acting work and could hire you again just seems a little silly to me. Now, in the vein of social media as well, I can't think of any better way for an actor's work to be seen who hasn't had a chance at breaking into a big network show or even a big cable show than posting something on social media that you have produced yourself. SAG has, I believe, monthly meetings to explain how their contract works in terms of new media. SAG bends over backwards to try to make it easy for actors to become entrepreneurial and to produce themselves. And if you need a director, I got a list of them who would love to help out. I think it's absolutely wonderful for an actor to reach out to any director that they feel comfortable with. It's always a director's prerogative to say, I'm so sorry, I'm too busy, or I'm so sorry, I don't really want to do that project. In fact, I just wrote to an actor who I know. I'd seen him on television the other night and said, oh gosh, I'd love to do anything with you. I said, web series, let's go. Because, being queen of the web series, having done my first 2, which won awards, and then I have 2 in the can already. I love doing short projects that don't take a long time, where I get to choose who I'm working with and really work on brand new material. There's nothing better. When I'm doing a web series, there's a very skeleton crew. But the key people that are still there are obviously a director of photography who sometimes functions as the camera operator, a script supervisor who keeps track of everything, my right-hand person, and the writer who very often, nearly always, is right there on set with me, especially since very often they've conceived this project. So in terms of the crew, it's a little different from when I'm doing things out in the real world because I can move a prop, I can move furniture, I do everything. I mean, I'll sweep up afterwards, but that's all in the camaraderie of getting it done and feeling like we're all helping and knowing that none of us are doing this for the money. We're doing it because we love it and we want to help the person whose project this is. I would say on a multi-camera sitcom, the person I interact with the most is the showrunner or head writer of that show. And on the set, on a daily basis, the core crew, which is your associate director and your script supervisor, and believe it or not, the on-set props and on-set set decorators are the people you work with all day, every day, especially during the rehearsal days. Then your DP and your 4 camera operators become essential in terms of your relationship, and you interact with them especially on the last 2 days. The 3 people that are really essential in episodic television are the AD, who the director has worked with all during prep, the director of photography, and the script supervisor. And of course, to really get the look, the art director also is very, very key in terms of making sure the set's props, the look of the show is really continuous from what they have established during the series. In terms of the way a director sees an actor who has done background work, first and foremost, if you're a background actor and you've done really great work for me, I will think nothing but amazing things about you, and I will always think of you for bigger parts. Because A, you helped me, and it was clear that you understood what was necessary on show day or on the day we were filming to know how you could help me. So never, never, never for me is there I'm pigeonholing you into, oh, you're a background artist. I also think the amount of experience, especially if you haven't been on set on a regular basis, that you can gain by doing background work is ridiculous. It's so good. And you can earn a decent wage. So why would you not do this? Now, that being said, when you're putting a reel together of the work you've done, I think if you showcase yourself, you have to be very, very careful that you present yourself in the way you want people to see you next. So, if you want a bigger part, you should be highlighting yourself as a person who gets those co-starring roles. Or if it's that next leap you want to make to those guest starring parts, or as that series regular. That's very different from actually doing the work and being on set. I can't think of any reason I would ever penalize an actor for being the best background artist ever. My gosh, I just got your talent at a background artist rate. I'm the lucky one. In terms of judging careers or helping careers and nurturing careers, all of that comes with, if you're in my stable, if you're one of my students, whether you want it or not, you get it from me, because the only way I know is to be honest. Yes, I have told actors to get nose jobs. I've told people to lose weight. I'm cruel, but it's always in the efforts that I think it might be a stumbling block to you really getting the work you deserve. Sometimes I'll tell you you need an attitude change. But that being said, I've never really wanted to do it. I've never wanted to write a book about it. I think there's people out there who do this and they're really good at it, being career coaches or life coaches. But I wouldn't presume to be one of those people. I'm specific when I direct. I'm specific when I try to help you with your career. And I do it because it's honestly coming from a place that's nurturing. And if you get that kind of advice from me, you should take it as a huge compliment, because I wouldn't tell an actor who I didn't believe in to try to do anything different, because they're not worth my time. I don't think they have prospects. But if I say something to you and it's a suggestion, or if I were in your position, this is what I would do, take it as a huge compliment, that it's because I believe in your prospects. In terms of single camera versus multi-camera, there was a lull. There was a big lull. And I think it kind of coincided with me wanting to direct single camera and episodic television. But there was a lull in terms of the amount of multi-camera shows being done. And I would say it's back at a nice balance. I think the only disservice to comedy that is sometimes done is when being a single camera show is forced on it, when it would be better served as a multi-camera show. The benefits of actually performing in front of a live audience for nearly everyone who is funny is incomparable. I mean, you just look at it and say, it's funnier when they perform in front of an audience. Now, that being said, there's certain production values that you don't get on a multi-camera show that you can get on a single camera show. I think each show has to find the niche it belongs in, and I think we're really at a wonderful balance now in terms of the shows that should be multi-camera are multi-camera, and the shows that should be single camera are single camera. And vive la différence. When I first started teaching, it was because I thought that people weren't prepared when they came to set. And that's on a multi-camera show. I still think that that's the case, that not everybody comes knowing what they should. And why is that different from single camera shows and episodic shows? Well, it's a different animal. And it's very unique what goes on a sitcom set. So I think to go on a sitcom set without a real working knowledge of story, structure, jokes, their structure, what each day is going to look like, is like actor suicide. It's ridiculous. Don't do it. Now, that being said, doing a movie is different. It's basically, you go in, you rehearse, they light, you shoot it. In that case, the actor suicide, and I hate to talk about negative things, but the actor suicide is an actor who comes to set not knowing their lines. And I mean, I know there's those of you out there going, people do that, and I'm going to tell you, people do that. And you go, really? And I go, really? I'm very flattered if an actor wants to put my name on their resume, having said I'd directed them or taught them. And I will tell you, I very often hear from managers and agents, oh, you know, I wasn't going to see this person, but because your name was on it, I thought I would bring them in. Now, conversely, make sure I liked you and make sure you weren't an asshole. And make sure you did good work for me, because if I am asked for a professional opinion, it's going to be honest. Getting a job as a director is way more competitive than trying to get a job acting. If you think about it, on any given show, there are your series regulars and new guest stars or co-stars every week. On a episodic series, there's multiple directors during the season, but only one director per episode. So just by sheer numbers, there's way less jobs. But more than that, the responsibility that a director has as the leader, as the person at the helm, as the person who will guide that episode, it's a huge amount of responsibility and a huge amount of fiscal responsibility. Because, for instance, let me compare it. Let's say there's a person writing an episode, and that person is hired, they write the episode, and it doesn't come out quite as well as the network wanted it to. Well, someone can rewrite that before they go into production. If you go into production and you are already prepped and you're already shooting and you find out that director doesn't know what they're doing or isn't excellent at what they're doing, it's a problem. It is. So I think the people who make those decisions, and rightly so, have to be completely confident in the excellence. And I'm not talking about the being good at. I'm talking the excellence at which you should be able to do that job and complete that job on time and on budget before anyone should even consider giving you a job. And as much as I have seen a lot of talented directors who might be able to create a short film or might be able to work with actors, or might know way more than I do about cameras, the ability for all those things to come together in a package of excellence doesn't always happen. And it has to get the job done on time and on budget. A meeting for a director is basically about, do they like you? Do they have confidence in you as a director? That's what it comes down to. I don't think you're in the position of getting that meeting unless you have some credits, unless you've proven that you know what the heck you're doing. And then it comes down to, will this director fit this show? So that meeting should be a party. No, but not really. I mean, but I don't think I have a shot at getting a show if I walk out of a room after one of those meetings and they haven't liked me and thought I was engaging and thought that I would, that my enthusiasm and my knowledge of their show already and the homework I've done and my preparedness wasn't evident. So if all those things haven't been achieved, if they haven't fallen in love with me and know I can do the job and know that my pairing with their show would be excellent, then I don't think I have a chance of getting that job. Now, on the other hand, if all those things happen, then I hope there's a chance I get a job, and then there's 3 more hurdles to go through before that even happens. The only two ongoing classes I teach are at USC School of Cinematic Arts, and that's directing classes. USC really has a policy of having part-time instructors of my caliber because they want people who work in the industry. And they are very, very generous in terms of their time with me being able to replace myself for class, as long as it's not the first 3 classes of the semester, when it's really key for me to be there and establish what the curriculum is for the class and how it goes. The 2 classes I presently teach there are project-based classes. I wish I could have an ongoing class in terms of my the 2 acting classes I teach regularly, but I can't, and that's because I can't commit to teaching all the time. So I usually try to find at least twice a year when I can teach my Sitcom Career class, which is based on the book, which is really a comedy technique class. And then the offshoot of that is a 3-camera class that you have to have taken the first class to really be prepped for. And that's usually just an intensive weekend. And if I can squeeze that in twice a year, I do that. My on-camera professional acting class, I try to teach 5 months a year, if I can squeeze that in. And again, I'm looking at when do I have 4 consecutive Mondays in a month that I can that I can be there. And if I can't, one of those weeks I try to replace myself. But again, it's always searching for that time when I'm in town and can say, yeah, I'll be here for you. And if I say I'm going to be here for you, I'm there for you. And it's an ongoing class. The easiest way to find out about my classes is to go to marylubelli.com, which is my website, and it describes almost all the different classes I teach and who to get in touch with, because it's different people for different classes. There is no audition process per se for either of my classes, but both of my classes are by invitation. So sometimes you'll be asked to submit a reel and a resume, or if you're recommended by another actor who has taken that class or has worked with you on a TV show, then very often that will be an easy entree to the class. And my ongoing professional acting class is, again, by word of mouth, and I never advertise. It's always by your reputation and who has introduced me to you. And why? One person in a class can ruin a class if that person isn't positive, comes in with a bad attitude, comes in unprepared. And the level at which I want both of my classes to function, I want you to be there joyfully, and I want you to not be able to wait for the next class to begin. And I want you to cry on the last day because it's over. I very often have actors who have taken my class come back and take that class again. It's and very successfully and very differently. Very often there's so much material I cover in my classes and I go at a very fast pace, and that's on purpose because I want you to be prepared for the pace at which you will do this professionally. So rarely will I slow things down. But the people who come back and take it the second time know basically what the curriculum's going to be, and then are prepared for it. And sometimes that repetition of what didn't really sink in that first time just solidifies with the taking of it the second time. All 3 of my books are available at Amazon.com, but if you live in Hollywood or New York, I also recommend supporting our showbiz bookstores, so Samuel French or Drama Bookshop in New York. If you really want my autograph, send it to me. I'll send it back. We'll just talk about how to cover postage. But yeah, and the other way is take my class and bring your book to class, and I'll sign it there. I do numerous appearances, so I give back to the community in terms of doing things for the DGA, SAG-AFTRA, AFI, and I'm always willing to take the time to sign something there, unless I'm rushing off to my next appointment. Sorry, it's not personal. The last thing I want to just say is I love actors. I think it is a gift that I get to work with them every day.